Since it's the hottest day of the year, apparently so far in the UK, I thought it would make total sense to come up into my office and make a YouTube video whilst wearing shorts and a t-shirt and sweating. So that's always a good start. Yesterday I asked if anybody had any questions which they might want to ask me. And thankfully there weren't just tons of messages saying, can you pass my script to Neil Marshall, which unbelievably I do get quite a lot. But they were about filmmaking. So one of the questions which somebody asked on Instagram was, what is your most enjoyable part of filmmaking? So what part of filmmaking do I enjoy the most? And I would have to say it's the collaboration. It's being part of a team. Last weekend was the 666 challenge from the London Horror Society. And just due to, a myriad of things, but mainly logistics and things like that, I ended up making it myself. And I can write and direct to a certain standard. That's absolutely fine. I at least know the process of that. Filming, I knew it was going to be found footage. That's the idea that I'd had anyway. So that wasn't too bad because I could just use my iPhone. I found a very basic editing app on the iPad, so those things were sorted. I could at least, walk around and do that, and it was quite good fun and practice for filming. And then I had to be an actor as well, and let's just say that all of you amazing actors out there are perfectly safe. None of you are going to be losing your jobs anytime soon, because I am definitely suited at being behind a camera. So although the finished project was a challenge, that was the whole point of it. It actually was a challenge to make a short film within a limited time, which happened to be 66 hours. But it was also a challenge for me to do all of these things I hadn't done before. As with everything, I used it as an amazing learning experience. But it isn't the same in any way, shape or form as being on a set and being with other people, not just who are doing the job and doing it a million times better than what I did, but just being able to go, does this shot look right? And have somebody else's opinion, or can you just go and make a coffee? Just anything like that. This bit of the script, we don't need that, do we? Can you just run through that bit again? It's like getting second opinions. It's other people's input, which sometimes is 100 times better than what you thought. Just those little things when somebody will have a light bulb moment and be like, what if we just try the shot over here? Just hear me out. What if we do it with this instead? And then it ends up being like the shot of the film. So that is probably my favourite side of filmmaking. The creative, collaborative experience of being there with other people and being able to say, do you think this might work? And those people being honest with you and saying, yes, that looks really good, or well, it could, but let's do it differently. The same person also asked, was there a specific story that I already had written that I would love to turn into a film? And the answer to that is most definitely yes. Footsteps is one of my favourite stories, which I've written anyway. And obviously that is being turned into a film, and that's hugely exciting. I have another story which I've turned into a script called Hook, Line and Sinker, which is it's very much my ode to Seven, which is another one of my all-time favourite films, about a serial killer who is killing people with a hook. And throws a few issues into the scenario as well for the detectives that are trying to solve the case, because he's or they or whatever is a vigilante killer. It's similar to Seven in a way, but rather than being John Doe of the God complex, there's something else going on here as well. But the detectives are finding that they've got drug dealers and paedophiles and people like that are the victims of this person, and the public are rather quite enjoying the streets being cleaned up. So that's a story that it's ready, the script is done, but it is something that I probably won't do myself with a small or crowdfunded budget, or because the story, if I say deserves, that sounds really big-headed, but it deserves a decent budget for the special effects alone, because there's a lot of like Seven, you know, you couldn't have made that on a shoestring because of the murder scenes and things. So to make it really effective, to make a really good a serial killer film, you need a decent budget. So that will be something which I'm hoping will be the next big project, but we shall see. Okay, somebody else asked me, what is my writing process like? Do I write with no boundaries, or do I keep within the realm of possibility? Now, it depends what head I have on for this. If I'm writing a story for a book, then I definitely write with no boundaries whatsoever. And I have actually written a couple of splatterpunk stories, extreme stories, with quite explicit both sexual and violent content and all of that kind of stuff. No boundaries whatsoever. They've been published, and hence why I've been nominated for a Splatterpunk Award as well. But with writing, if I'm doing a spec script, or if I'm choosing one of my stories to turn into a script, then definitely there is far more writing within the realms of possibility. That's actually the entire reason why Her was the very first of my short stories that I made into a film, because it's very much a single location, only 2 characters, not a lot of dialogue, not a lot of stuff needed to be done, very little special effects or props or anything like that. It's a very simple, contained story. And for somebody's very first time turning that into a script, and then shortlisting and directing, and obviously I did it in my own house and all of that kind of stuff, it needed to be something which was extremely short and simple that we could do that. So that was definitely keeping within the realms of possibility. I've got some stories which are fantastical, and if I'd have even attempted to try and turn something like that into a script, it would have been absolutely ridiculous, because it would have been just far too much for somebody who is using every single time they do this to learn. This is my experience, this is my work experience, this is my running around with a Super 8 camera and making films with my friends in the garage over summer. This is what I'm doing instead. So definitely there is an element of not making it simple because of what I'm doing, but keeping it simple because of budget restrictions and things that you can do and things that you can show and all of that kind of stuff. So you definitely have to think a little bit differently when you're writing a script and turning it into a film. But on the flip side of that, sometimes when you are struggling with words and description and things are getting a bit lengthy, and you've spent 10 pages describing something in a story, you can show it easily with something visual in a script, which obviously turns into a shot on film, and that's quite nice if you've got a story that had something that was particularly difficult to try and describe because it was so visual, knowing that you don't have to worry about that, because you can definitely do the show don't tell. You can literally film whatever that was, because that is the thing that was really hard to describe, but you can see it really easily. So yeah, definitely there is an element of knowing my limitations, not wanting to bombard my DOP and people with like, oh yeah, this is the shot I want, and this is it, and we need a drone for this and this for that, because that's just silly at this particular level. Whether I'll ever move on to, or whether I'll be lucky enough to ever go to a set where all of that kind of stuff happens, that'll be amazing. But at my level, it's good to have aspirations and things that, like, oh, we could do this one day, but for now, got to definitely know the limitations of what I'm doing. So those were the questions that I plucked off of Instagram. So I quite enjoyed being able to do that. I've actually written a fairly lengthy pieces, almost diary-like entries at the moment about making her, and I'm just working on the format of that a little bit, and hopefully that's going to be published over at Ghouls magazine at some point. Just really sort of talking about the ups and downs, the good and the bad, the things I learned, the mistakes that I made, and all that kind of stuff with making her, and hopefully that will be a little bit inspiring for somebody else who's thinking about doing this, which is the whole point of why I talk about it. I always say that it's not to be like, woo, look at me, I'm making films, woo. But also it is to say, look at me. If I can do this, if I can attempt to make these films and connect with people to want to make films with me, then so can you. If it's your dream, then please do it. I know that sounds so cliche, especially when I'm wearing my Disney top, the whole if you can dream it, you can do it, but that is part of what I believe and what I do. So that is that. News over the last week or so, we have made some really exciting announcements for Footsteps. So most of the cast is sorted now, but obviously with contracts and different bits and pieces, we're still waiting to be able to make some announcements, which is always the way. And we might keep something back to do a reveal a bit later, but most of the people have now been announced. So Bella and Nicole, who play Felicity and Becky, were announced right back at the start anyway, when we launched Indiegogo. We now have 3 of our 4 voiceovers. There's 2 scenes in Footsteps where characters are listening to the radio, because we're set back in the 90s, listening to the car radio, and they're listening to the DJ, and there's a news announcer, and that's how we, you know, do a bit of an exposition where we put in information and all of that kind of stuff. And so we've managed to get some very cool people to agree to do the voiceovers for us, which is better than, as I have discovered, me trying to do anything, because I suck at that. So we have, incredibly, we have Craig Conway, who was in Dog Soldiers and The Descent and Doomsday, and is a great friend of Neil Marshall's and myself. He's doing one of the voices, so really happy about that. Ben Fenlon, who is another really good friend of mine from For the Love of Horror. He might not have done a lot of acting kind of stuff, but he is so good at doing all of the Q&A things that he does with For the Love of Horror. Obviously the podcast and the fact that they do the For the Love of Horror show live on Facebook and all that kind of stuff. So I knew he would be someone that would be not only well up for doing it, but someone that would be really beneficial to the film. So he's doing one of them. And then Alex Zane is doing one of our voices. That was another case of when I found out that he was a big fan of Event Horizon, asking him if he'd like to come on and do our round table, which is already on the YouTube. You can watch that, and please do, because it's really interesting listening, not just to me talking, but to some other really interesting people talking about how much they love Event Horizon. And I just had one of my don't ask, don't get, go on, why not moments, and said to him, Alex, would you like to do a voice for me, please, for my film? And he was like, yeah, I'd love to. And he is just absolutely amazing and wonderful. So I cannot believe that he is doing one of our voices. That is so cool. And then we have got somebody just phenomenal doing our creature acting. So I know I have had quite a few messages this week actually from people saying about whether we need a creature actor, and we are sorted for that. Thank you so much. Anybody that contacts me, we kind of like keep in a database for potential work in the future and all that kind of stuff, and I'm always humbled when people approach me and say, you know, I do this, can I be in your film? But we are fully cast now, so thank you for that. That's somebody that the contract is all still being drawn up at the moment, so we can't reveal who that is, but it is a mind-blowing casting, most definitely. We are now sorted, thanks to the wonderful Joe, with our location, after having a few nightmare scenarios of trying to find somewhere local to me. Places just either were a really nice place but were too close to the traffic, or were a really nice place but didn't have any even like a toilet or something close by. And obviously with a casting crew you need to have certain very basic things like being able to go to the toilet and have a cup of tea, because an unhappy crew is not a productive crew, and an unhappy cast, you will not hear the end about it. So we need to make sure we've got basic amenities for our casting crew. So nothing was quite working here, but we've managed to, Joe got in touch with me and he has a location up in Essex, so that is where we're going to be filming now, in Essex, in October. So that is very exciting. So we are still, the Indiegogo is still live, it's still in demand at the moment, and every penny that we have made there is going on things like transport and accommodation and paying all of the cast and crew, wardrobe, makeup, special effects, all of that kind of stuff. It's being ploughed into that, and we are so grateful. So very, 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 very grateful, and thank you very much for all of that. Obviously I did the Event Horizon chat, which I've just mentioned, and we have another one coming up hopefully in a couple of weeks, which is Jaws, which is very exciting. It's one of those films that is obviously iconic and a classic, and I don't know why some people say it isn't horror. So if you don't think it's horror, fine. I do think it's horror, but I realised I hadn't watched in like at least 10 years, which is ridiculous because it's on TV like every other week or something. As I say that, I caught little bits of it, you know, sometimes it's on like one of these ITV4 channels at like 12 at night or something, and I'd caught like a bit of it a few months ago but hadn't watched it all the way through for ages. So I thought, well, if I set up a panel to talk about it, then that gives me an excuse to have to watch it. So we rewatched it last night, and it's the first time rewatching it with filmmaker eyes, and I have to say, if I thought that it was pretty much perfect, you know, from memories of watching it years ago, watching it through a filmmaker's POV was even better, where you're like going, oh, how did they get that shot, and this and that, and oh my god, that you know, monologue is just amazing, and this is brilliant, and look at that, look, they did that sweeping shot of the beach and you can't see any cameras and dollies, and like, oh, it was just, rewatching it was just brilliant. And of course it was warm in the UK yesterday, so after having a stinking hot day, sitting down and watching that in the evening was perfection. So at the moment we have Neil Marshall and Jonathan Jans and Alex Zane talking about Jaws with me in a couple of weeks, so very much looking forward to that as well. Still got several more of these roundtables kind of booked to talk to people. The next one after Jaws will hopefully be 7. That was arranged, but one of our participants has got a prior engagement, so just need to rearrange the times to talk about 7. But that is, I don't need an excuse to rewatch 7. I rewatched it a couple of months ago, and already having listened to one of Alex's other podcasts, Clash of the Titles, they did 7 and Saw a couple of weeks ago, and having listened to that just made me want to watch it again anyway. So I will be, and I'm hopefully going on a podcast in a couple of weeks to talk about 7 as well, so it just makes perfect sense to keep rewatching these films. And as I know with Dog Soldiers, that's not something that's a problem for me. I can rewatch stuff over and over and over. News on the writing front, Neil and I are going to be getting together in a couple of weeks to really start the pre-production, the planning for the making of the Descent book. So very excited for that. Other writing news, as always, nothing I can really talk about at the moment. I've been invited to do something producery. I've been invited to do something directory, if those are words. And I have a very big pitch out at the moment for something that, if it comes to fruition, will be a very, very big project. But as with lots of these things, there's lots and lots of people that have to say yes to it before it can become a thing. But keep your fingers crossed for me on that one. Again, that's probably going to be something I can't even really talk about very much, but then I like to just tease and say I'm sending this email, wish me luck, kind of thing, and people are always so nice and always do wish me luck, which I really appreciate. Anyway, I've ummed and ahed enough through this and managed to spend over 20 minutes waffling when I thought that this might just be a quick 5 minutes of me trying not to melt in the office. So as always, extremely grateful for anybody who actually listens to this. I hope, as I always say with this, that somebody listening is thinking, do you know what, if you can do it, old woman, then I can do it too. And that's what happened when I wrote Sausages. I had lots of people come to me afterwards and say, how did you start the process of, you know, writing about your favourite film? What did you do? How did you approach people? And just being able to talk to people and say, okay, well, maybe if you start doing this or doing that and whatnot, it gave people the inspiration to go, do you know what, I'm going to email such and such, or try someone's agent and see if I can. And I know several people who have since come back to me and said, I took your advice and I reached out and I'm now writing the making of or a novelization of something and whatnot. And it's just, oh, it's amazing to see other people are doing that. And if anything that I do, if that can help somebody else, if that can just be the boost that you need to do anything at all, then that makes me very happy. So as always, thank you so much. If you've watched this, please subscribe to the channel. Please tell other people that there's this random British woman that talks too much about stuff, and it would be amazing. Thank you.